Wow, look at the high school dropout coming in. Such a stupid face, I can feel it from here. And do dropouts have kids with stupid faces too? How annoying. My son Daniel and I were at a fancy steakhouse. Then, I ran into a beautiful old classmate, Lisa, a returnee from abroad, who always looked down on me since our school days. She was with her foreign boyfriend, chatting and laughing in French. From their demeanor, you could tell they were bad-mouthing us. Suddenly, my son Daniel stood up and said, "Miss, I understand everything you're saying." After interpreting everything, Lisa turned pale when she realized who we were. "Listen, from tomorrow, there won't be a place for you at the company," my son Daniel added. Yes, the identity of me and my son Daniel that shocked Lisa and her foreign boyfriend. My name is James. I was a quiet, reserved boy during my school years. I was so clumsy in sports that I was a drag on my class during sports events. That's why in PE classes, I was always the target of ridicule. But there was one thing I could immerse myself in. It is studying. I loved it because it didn't require physical skills, and I didn't have to interact much with others. So, I was always among the top in my class academically. But because of my timid nature, I was an easy target since elementary school. I was often teased and spoken ill of by my classmates. This harassment continued in middle school. Among them, Lisa, a returnee from Paris, was particularly relentless in her teasing. All because you're a little bit smarter, you're too arrogant, you're so introverted, it's creepy, switch seats with me, you belong in the cold seat by the window. After the seat changed during break time, Lisa came to my seat and demanded to switch seats. It seemed she was dissatisfied with her seat and targeted me, thinking I'd be the most likely to agree. I didn't mind sitting by the window or anywhere else, so I just switched as she asked. Lisa even seemed displeased with my compliant attitude, but she quickly left when called by a friend. Such a fuss over a simple seat change. Others, though not as bad as Lisa, also seemed to think they could get their way with me, making unreasonable demands. I was forced to swap cleaning duties, and they would make up silly songs about me. Especially after tests, when my name was posted among the top scorers, they made me feel particularly bad. Still, I never felt I could win an argument. So I just quietly endured through middle school. After graduating, I decided to keep my future plans secret from my classmates, saying I'll work after high school, and enrolled in a technical college in a distant town. If you want to go to a technical college, that's fine with us. We support you. I wanted to avoid further interactions with my middle school classmates and sought a deeper learning experience not available in regular high schools. My parents readily agreed. My mom would say, if you have something you want to do, do it. I'm really grateful to have parents who supported me like that. Going there, I realized how well the extensive and profound education at the technical college suited me, especially in programming. I even won an award in a programming competition. "James, you're amazing. I'm so surprised." The girl who approached me after I won the award was Emily. She was a very bright and cheerful girl in my class. She was popular in our class, good at studies, and we quickly became friends. You were bullied in middle school, James. You might be quiet, but you're smart, and I enjoy talking to you." Despite our opposite personalities, Emily saw my traits as part of my charm, and we soon became a couple. I was still not great at socializing, but Emily, with her bright, blooming smile, was someone I could open up to. We clicked well, both being academically smart, and she liked me for who I was. And I liked her too. I thoroughly enjoyed my high school life, both in studies and youthfulness. After graduating from technical college, I continued my relationship with Emily while working at an IT company, utilizing my programming skills. At this IT company, All internal communication was done through non-face-to-face tools like chat, which was a comfortable environment for someone like me who is not good at interacting with people. The work itself was busy but fulfilling. The years flew by since I started working. Thank you for always being with me, Emily. If you're okay with it, will you marry me? Yes, I'd love to. Thank you, James. When things settled down at work, I proposed to Emily, and she happily accepted. We got married. A few years after our marriage, we had a child, and at Emily's wish, we named him Daniel. Daniel loved drawing more than anything, more than singing or being held. Usually, Emily or I would prepare crayons and a notebook for him, but at some point, he learned to do it himself, even though he was still a toddler, and would start drawing. These delightful days of watching Daniel grow came to an abrupt end. A tragedy struck our family like no other. Emily, who went to work on her day off, was struck and killed by a falling steel plate from a construction site. Why? Why did it have to be Emily? Dad, where did Mom go? She didn't leave us to go to heaven, did she? Daniel, realizing his mother, Emily, was gone, Daniel's disbelief was palpable, and I held him tightly in my arms. Working on your day off? Yes, they asked me to come in on Sunday because they were short-staffed. James, if you're okay, could you take care of Daniel? Emily had asked me about working on her day off a few days before. I didn't have work that day, so I agreed. I never imagined something like this would happen. If only I had stopped Emily for any reason. If only I had driven her to work, this might not have happened. I was filled with regret. And now, because I couldn't protect Emily, I had caused Daniel to suffer too. Daniel and I were engulfed in grief. But I couldn't stay away from work forever. I also started doing the unfamiliar household chores and parenting as a single parent. I've made dinner, so eat with Daniel. Mom, thank you so much. It's nothing. I know it's tough, but you need to hang in there with Daniel. Now, I have to go to work too. Though my parents helped occasionally with housework and childcare, doing it alone was a Herculean task. I tried to finish chores when Daniel was engrossed in drawing or asleep. After putting my beloved son to bed, I often lay exhausted on the floor, sprawled out, staring at the ceiling. In those moments, I'd find myself lost in thought, reminiscing about Emily. I realized how much I had taken Emily's kindness for granted, as she had always taken the lead in household and child care duties. Dad, we'll be late for daycare. Hurry up. Daniel, like Emily, was responsible, and he'd prompt me as I rushed in the mornings. After Emily's death, Daniel initially cried a lot, but gradually, he accepted reality, became stronger, and tried his best every day. I knew he must be missing his mother, Emily. Without ever complaining, he was always there for me, an incredibly good kid. For Daniel, and for Emily in heaven, I resolved to stay strong. And so, I balanced work, housework, and parenting. Every day was a whirlwind. I would often be the last parent to pick my son up from daycare. When I picked up Daniel from daycare, he was always drawing until the very last minute. Mr. Thompson, is Daniel always drawing like that? I asked Mr. Thompson, and he told me Daniel was so absorbed in drawing that he preferred it over playing with friends. It reminded me of my own student days. I reminisce about the times when I was studious and loved studying. Your son's drawings are all wonderful. If you and Daniel are okay with it, how about we submit his drawings to a contest? One day, Mr. Thompson from the daycare suggested entering Daniel's drawings in a competition. Hey, Daniel, how about we enter your drawings into a contest? What's a drawing contest? Well, it's a place where people who can draw as well as you get to show their work to experts who know all about article. On the way home, I discussed this with Daniel. His eyes lit up with excitement, and he immediately wanted to participate. So the next day, I told Mr. Thompson we would submit Daniel's drawings. Later, Daniel's drawing won the top prize. Knowing his talent, Daniel and I were overjoyed. "Daniel, you're amazing. Who knew you had such talent? Great job." Daniel looked at me, beaming with joy, as if he was celebrating his own achievement. I patted his head with all my love. "Today, we'll treat ourselves to a nice meal." We started going out for meals whenever there was something to celebrate, just like that. As if to fill the void left by Emily's absence. We continued to live our days positively. A few years later, Daniel turned 9. Daniel and I went to a fancy steakhouse to celebrate this special occasion. Then, to our surprise, seated behind us, was Lisa, my former middle school classmate. She was with someone who seemed to be her foreign boyfriend, and after a while, Lisa noticed me and started a conversation. "James, is that your kid? You always had a gloomy aura. I recognized you right away, and you were a high school dropout, right? How can you walk around your hometown without feeling ashamed? Just like in our student days." She looked down on me, still believing I was a dropout, laughing mawkishly. Then, Lisa and her boyfriend sat down at their table. But strangely, they started speaking in French, glancing over at us, seemingly talking about us. It brought back memories of middle school. The atmosphere alone made it clear they were bad-mouthing us. I had only one concern. Daniel, in fact, understood French perfectly. Suddenly, Daniel stood up and approached Lisa and her boyfriend. "Miss, I understand everything you're saying." "Oh, what's this kid talking about? There's no way a child can understand French." "No, you just said my dad was creepy in French, didn't you?" Hearing Lisa say such things again, I was appalled at how little she changed since middle school. But she and her boyfriend became furious with Daniel, accusing him of making things up. Daniel then began to recount everything they had said. He mentioned how I was plain and lonely in middle school, had no friends and a burden to the class due to my lack of athletic skills. And how even now, I haven't changed a bit, still plain, and even my kid looks plain and stupid, saying my stupidity affected my son. While I was left holding my head in dismay, Lisa and her boyfriend were still arguing with Daniel, denying everything and calling it nonsense. Daniel was known for being brilliant and talented, especially since he immersed himself in drawing as if to fill the void left by his mother's absence. His artistic skills had improved dramatically. He'd been delivering artwork to a French art dealers in elementary school thanks to his talent in drawing. And in the process of dealing with this art dealer, he had also mastered French. On my side, skilled in IT, I thought about leveling up my skills to enhance my son's language abilities. I left my job at the IT company and started an online language school with Daniel. Daniel mainly taught French to children who wanted to learn. For student sessions with kids, we involved Mr. Thompson, as he got along better with them. For languages other than French, we hired other teachers. I was in charge of the core systems of the company, like the teacher-student matching system and schedule management. Seeing Lisa and her boyfriend, I suddenly remembered something. They were recently hired as employees at our language school. I was at an event at Daniel's school the day of the interview and left the interview process to other staff, so I only received their resumes. I hoped they had changed over the years, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Remember, from tomorrow, there won't be a place for you two at the company. Lisa and her boyfriend turned pale, even forgetting the steak on the griddle was burning. It was their own doing. According to Daniel, Lisa and her boyfriend had also been speaking ill of students in French. It's outrageous to talk ill of students. As an executive, I had to address this issue. Such tasteless behavior. I hope you never show your faces to me and my father again. Daniel said firmly to Lisa and her boyfriend before returning to our table with a smile. Come on, let's eat, Dad. We came here for this. His talent and even his smile seemed too radiant. making me wonder if he really was my son. He seemed too perfect, but watching him laugh innocently, I realized he still had the same carefree nature as any other child. And with that, Lisa and her boyfriend, unable to bear the shame, left the restaurant in a hurry, leaving their meal behind. I apologized to Daniel for the unpleasant experience. Daniel winked at me and told me not to worry about it. He's such a thoughtful kid. I often feel he's too good for someone like me. Hey, Mr. Anderson and Daniel. Then, we heard a voice calling us from the entrance of the restaurant. Turning around, it seemed that students from our language school had gathered. Mr. Anderson, you're here early. Have you started eating already? Wait, who's actually late here? I asked. Sorry, it was us. Indeed, this wasn't a class, so I had told them to come around lunchtime, but they were surprisingly casual about time. But are you sure it's okay for us to join for such an expensive meal? The students looked at me anxiously. I had decided to treat the students as a thank you for their help, like referring other students to our language school. Hearing this, the students were delighted. Soon, all the students gathered and we celebrated the 3rd anniversary of our language school. Later, Lisa and her boyfriend were fired from the language school. Their mockery of us was problematic, but the direct cause of their dismissal was talking about customers outside the company. Apparently, Lisa had spoken about customers out of spite towards us, hoping to make it look like we were the ones who said it, but there were witnesses, and her plan failed. It was just retribution coming back to her. Lisa always struggled with studying and wasn't good at being persistent, had no talent other than French. With her personality, I heard she was having trouble finding another job, but I decided to leave her to her own devices. Her boyfriend, who was fired at the same time, influenced their situation, and soon they were drowning in debt. Then, her boyfriend lashed out at her, blaming her for their predicament. Why did you start ridiculing James so much back then? James was always good at studies and at the top of his class in middle school. I had good grades in France, but when I returned to America for middle school, the difference in the education system made it hard for me to keep up. Trying to justify herself to her angry boyfriend, Lisa continued, crying and speaking angrily. I was always near the bottom in tests. I thought I was capable, and that was frustrating. I hated him because he was good at studies. Because of her pride, she never talked about these feelings before, and Lisa ended up crying. Leaving the crying Lisa behind, her boyfriend, holding his head in his hands, apparently said, all this over that, and eventually left the house they were living in together. Now jobless and alone, Lisa was left to lead a lonely life. And then, a few days later, an unexpected incident occurred. Mr. Anderson, please come here. A panicked student led me to the entrance of the language school, where Lisa was causing a commotion with other students. What on earth is going on? James, it's all your fault. Lisa, having noticed me, rushed towards me. Clearly, her target was me. Seeing Lisa barge into our school without permission, not being a student or teacher, I glared at her with sharp eyes, feeling anger. It's all your fault. My life is a mess. Just because you could study a bit, getting all high and mighty, I'll sue you for firing me unjustly. After all this time, you haven't changed at all, Lisa. Why did you have to hate me just because I had good grades? There are plenty of people smarter than me. If it's about being top, you'd have to hate them too. What do you know about me? You know nothing. You have no idea how much I've suffered. I don't know because you never once tried to bridge the gap between us, Lisa. Hearing that, Lisa seemed taken aback. She had always showered me with unpleasant words whenever she saw me, so it must have hit close to home. After all, that was the root cause. Why did you have to hate me like that? I would have preferred you to say you were struggling and ask for help with your studies. If taking the upper hand over people is your life, you'll always be bound by your own pride. If you really want to be bound, be my guest. I've already called the police for trespassing." "What? Police? Don't move." Then, as if on cue, police officers, apparently called by Daniel, stormed into the building and quickly apprehended Lisa. Shocked by the turn of events, I looked at Daniel, who gave me a peace sign. Such a fearsome child. "Let go of me. I have business with this man." Even with the police there, Lisa, consumed by hatred, continued to struggle and was eventually escorted into a police car and taken away. That was scary. Glad she didn't have any dangerous stuff on her. She reminds me of that teacher, Mr. Smith, who was fired the other day. Maybe she's holding a grudge against Mr. Anderson. Well, she was leaking information, so it's only natural she was fired. Some students felt relieved and greatly relieved to be freed from their fear. Thanks to Daniel calling the police while I was talking to Lisa, thankfully, no harm came to the students or Daniel. The thought of what could have happened if they had been injured sends shivers down my spine. "Are you okay, Dad? You look pale." Concerned, Daniel looked closely at my face. I quickly assured him I was fine and forced a smile. Between the incident at the steakhouse and now this, I owe a lot to Daniel. As a father, I need to be more responsible. I put my hand on Daniel's head and gently stroked it to reassure him. "I'm okay. Thank you, Daniel. You really helped me out. Let's cancel the classes for today. Can you help me spread the word to everyone?" Of course. Inspired by Daniel's bravery, together we informed the students about the cancellation of the day's classes. Years later, the company Daniel and I built continued to grow steadily. I further enhanced our internal systems, automating most of the accounting to increase efficiency. This allowed us to raise the teachers' salaries and attract higher quality instructors. Daniel continued to draw, becoming so renowned that he won awards in major competitions open to adults. "Mr. Anderson, I'm a huge fan. Could I please have your autograph?" As he became famous, the number of enthusiastic fans increased, and Daniel was quickly surrounded by them. Overwhelmed by this, I noticed a few fans glancing at me. "Is that plain-looking guy a staff member? He's too plain. Totally out of place here and next to Mr. Anderson." I was wearing a suit, trying to look presentable, but overhearing the whispers of Daniel's fans, I couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. I wondered what about me was giving off such a plain vibe. Maybe it's just because I'm an unremarkable man. Then, I remembered being targeted by Lisa in the past, proving it wasn't just a coincidence. Indeed, compared to Daniel, who sparkles like an idol, I, with my unfashionable black-rimmed glasses, lacked any aura and was worlds apart from him. Or maybe, it's just my face. As I stood there, shocked, Daniel, who had overheard the comments, came over to me with a smile that seemed to have sound effects and addressed his fans. "This man here is my father. He's the reason my artistic talent shines. So, if you're a fan of mine, I'd appreciate it if you refrain from making such comments." With Daniel's smile and statement, the fans' faces turned pale, and fearing the displeasure of the other fans, they quickly left the scene. Angering Daniel's fans can be really scary. Well, those kids probably wouldn't have said that if they knew I was your father. "Dad, you're too kind." Fans who behave like that at the scene are questionable. I was left speechless by Daniel's firm opinion, marveling at his excellence. It seems today's kids are not only talented but also compassionate. He really does take after his mother, Emily. Reminiscing about Emily, I watched Daniel being applauded by his fans with a fond smile. A few days later, on a tranquil spring day, Daniel and I chose to visit Emily's grave together. While sharing recent achievements, we talked about how studying really makes a person bloom, and effort never betrays you. I remembered Emily was also very studious, and that's what drew us together. Without Emily, Daniel wouldn't have been born. We all love studying in our family, don't we? It's moving to think that Mom and Dad's passion for learning brought me into this world. "Weren't you ever lonely without Mom, Daniel?" I asked him, looking concerned. Daniel had always been with me without any complaints, but he must have felt the absence of his mother. However, Daniel shook his head with a smile. "No, because Dad was always there with me." His smile and words almost brought tears to my eyes. Getting older makes one more prone to tears, it seems. "You should be proud of yourself, Dad. I owe my success to you." I was so grateful to see how well Daniel had grown up. It was all thanks to Emily watching over us from above. In front of Emily's grave, Daniel and I joined hands, and I reported our lives to her. Then, as if Emily were responding, a gentle breeze blew between us. Cherry blossom petals, seemingly carried by the wind, appeared out of nowhere, fluttering in the air. One landed in the palm of my hand. It felt like a part of Emily's floral-like smile, so I gently stored the petal in my pocket. The presence of family seemed to have blossomed even a reserved person like me. It was then that I realized how much one's life can change through encounters with others. Following the example set by Daniel and Emily, I learned to smile more. As I became more open, naturally, people started to gather around me, and I began to slowly bridge the gap with those I had previously found difficult. Though I had kept them at a distance because of my discomfort, I started to realize that talking with many people wasn't so bad after all. Seeing me become more cheerful, Daniel seemed happy too, which made me feel joyful. I took out the cherry blossom petal I picked up during our visit to Emily's grave. I treasured it like a bookmark used in a book, carrying it with me as a charm, as if it were Emily herself. Ever since I found it, I felt as if it had been giving me courage. "Could it be, Emily? Is this you?" Feeling somehow as if Emily's spirit was residing in it, and finding myself alone, I spoke aloud without thinking. Even though I knew such a thing couldn't possibly be true. But I wished it were so. "Keep watching over Daniel and me, Emily." With a soft smile, I said this and then carefully placed the petal back into my pocket.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.